This time I'll be talking about all 15 games that came out for the Nintendo 64 in 1996. This includes North American and Japanese releases. The reason I'm making this is my Nintendo 64 here is dying. I've had this thing since the summer of 1996. Yeah, it's a Japanese 64. You can still see the microplay sticker right there. This is the console I've had the longest in my collection. I've had some that I've had to replace multiple times. So, my old friend, this is for you and everything that came out for you the year that you did. Please do consider liking and subscribing. Let's go!
It's me, Mario! Hello!
Oh my god!
Mario 64 was first released in Japan on June 23, 1996. Next released in North America on September 29, 1996, then released in PAL territories on March 1, 1997. It also came out on the IQ player in China on November 18, 2003. Well, Mario 64, who the hell doesn't know this game? Also, what is there to say about it that hasn't already been said about people that know much more about the game than I do? So I guess instead I'll tell my story of getting my Nintendo 64. Way back in the day, there used to be this chain of video game stores called Microplay. In 1996, I was just getting into anime. I'd started the previous year by watching Sailor Moon, then Dragon Ball, and so on. Real quick, back then Dragon Ball Z only played on Sundays, and it was only one episode. It took forever for Goku to get to Namek, and then it started over again. Okay, back to Microplay. They had a huge selection of anime and import games. One day in July, I walked in and saw a Japanese 64 for sale. It had Mario 64, Pilotwings 64, and 2 controllers. My 11-year-old mind was blown. I convinced my mom to let me use some money set aside for me. Man, oh man, playing Mario 64 for the first time was amazing. Yeah, there'd been a few 3D games before it, but nothing like Super Mario 64. If you were there at the time, this was more than just an outstanding game, it was an experience. Mario 64 gave players the freedom they'd never seen before. When summer vacation was coming to an end, I made a new friend. I asked him to help me pass a part in Mario RPG. I never told him about my Nintendo 64, so he walks into my room and flips out. I remember those words clearly. "Whoa, you have the Ultra 64?" That was the last time I'd ever heard anyone call it that. Anyway, Mario 64, you know it, you've played it. Next game.
Here we go!
Pilotwings 64 was first released in Japan on June 23, 1996. Next released in North America on September 29, 1996, and released in PAL territories on March 1, 1997. Pilotwings 64 was a joint development between Nintendo and Texas-based Paradigm Simulation. Paradigm developed vehicle and flight simulations before working on Pilotwings 64. Nintendo approached them because of their experience with Silicon Graphics workstations. Paradigm had never worked on a video game before. They extensively studied the original Pilotwings on the Super Nintendo while developing for the
Nintendo Ultra 64.
When the Nintendo 64 came out in Japan, it was one of 3 launch titles. In North America, it was one of 2. And in PAL territories, it was also one of 3 in 1997. Pilotwings 64 is a flight game where you can take control of multiple forms of air transportation. I say that instead of vehicles because one is a cannon, and another one is just some springs. The game starts off with 3 vehicles and beginner island to fly around. 3 are a hang glider, a jetpack, and a gyrocopter. The 3 weight classes are represented by 3 male characters and 3 female characters. All of them are a little goofy, but they really work for the game. For each stage, a score is given based on the time completing the objective and the landing. Controlling all these vehicles feels good. It's just amazing how well this game plays all these years later. I would say the hang glider is my least favorite. It flies a lot of wind streams. The jetpack is fun, so is the gyrocopter. The unlockables are a wingsuit, a cannon that fires the characters out of it, and spring shoes. Of all the maps, the coolest is the mini United States. There are tons of landmarks, including Mario on Mount Rushmore. If you shoot him, he becomes Wario. There's even a little gas station to refuel at. Pilotwings 64 and Super Mario 64 were the perfect launch titles to show what this console was capable of. Pilotwings 64 is still a lot of fun. Not something that will last for hours, but it's fun to come back to from time to time. If you've never played it, give it a shot. If you haven't played it in a while, maybe it's time to. Saikyo Habu Shogi was released in Japan on June 23, 1996. I know nothing about Shogi. This game was developed by Seta. It was one of 3 launch titles in Japan. So yeah, I've got nothing else to say about this one except it looks like it could have been easily done on the Super Nintendo. So on to Wave Race.
先手6、8玉。後手8、7金。
Oh my god!
先手7、9角。
Wave Race 64 was first released in Japan on September 27, 1996. Next released in North America on November 4, 1996, then in PAL territories on April 29, 1997. Also in China on the IQ Player on November 18, 2003. So yeah, I had quite a wait before I got to play a new N64 game. This one was a rental for me. I can definitely say I'm much more impressed with this game as an adult. This is actually a sequel to Wave Race on the Game Boy. You know, just in case you didn't know that. I'm a little embarrassed to say it's been around 28 years since I played this last. Wave Race 64 has a few modes to play: Championship, Time Trial, and Stunt. There's also 2-player split-screen races. There are 4 races to choose from, all with different handling, top speed, and acceleration. These can be customized as well. First thing you'll notice about this game is how well it's aged. The water is still unreal for 1996. Nintendo really captured the unpredictability of water. Waves might come crashing through, forcing the player to readjust quickly or crash into something. In races and time trials, there are red and yellow buoys. These have to be weaved between to keep up the jet ski's speed, and you can only miss so many before you lose. Wave Race 64 moves fast. I can understand why it was referred to as F-Zero on water. I mean, they originally envisioned transforming vehicles, but that's beyond the point. The game moves fast. That includes split screen. When my son and I played, it kept up with the speed. It'd be cool if you could play championship mode together, or maybe race with other racers. For 1996, this is understandable though. Along with Mario and Pilotwings, Wave Race 64 really does a great job showing what the Ultra 64 could do. Wave Race 64 is definitely a must-play for any Nintendo 64 fan. I've surprisingly talked to quite a few people over the years that have never played it. If you never played it, give it a shot. The time trials are still very competitive today. Maybe you have the potential to be the fastest in the world. Just a heads up, this one's got some graphical issues, and there's more of them down the line. Wonder Project J2 was released in Japan on November 22, 1996. And interestingly enough, it was released for iOS in Japan on April 12, 2010. In 2017, a fan translation was released by Ryu. I played this game in Japanese a long time ago. I couldn't get very far. First off, I just want to say this game has amazing box art. Very reminiscent of Studio Ghibli. I like it as much as I like a lot of Yoshitaka Amano's Final Fantasy box art. Wonder Project J2 is a sequel to Wonder Project J for the Super Nintendo. In the first game, a robot named Peanut was created by Dr. Geppetto. Man, they went really hard with the Pinocchio inspiration. Spoiler incoming, Peanut doesn't make it at the end. Dr. Geppetto creates another robot named Josette. She's the star of Wonder Project J2. This all happens in J2's intro. I messed around with the original years ago but never beat it. At the start of the game, Dr. Geppetto dies. He made arrangements for Josette to be looked after by Player-san. Josette calls me Evo-san. Josette is such a charming and cute character. This robot doesn't know very much. You have to teach her everything from greetings to tasks, reading, and so on. Josette lives in Blue Land. She moves after Dr. Geppetto dies. The Siliconians rule both Blue Land's mainland and its artificial island. There is an overarching story to the game. As Josette explores the many locations on both islands, cutscenes advancing the story pop up from time to time. Wonder Project J2 is a life sim. The player controls a bird that works as a conduit between worlds. Josette knows someone is there, and she'll communicate with you quite a bit. When she's out in most areas, the bird won't be around. During those times, you'll just have to see how she'll act. For example, she got a job as a waitress. One day I sent her to work and she ate her tray. On the next 2 trips, she threw it and then kicked it. Josette's mood really affects how she completes tasks or even if she'll do what you ask. One thing about this game is the beautiful artwork. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to emulate without a lot of graphical issues. So many amazing backgrounds and really great character designs. Wonder Project J2 is definitely something really different on the N64. A PS1 port was planned with more animation, but that was cancelled. This is the perfect game when you just need to relax, especially if it's been a rough day. Stardew Valley is the only other game that can cheer me up when things get tough. Definitely check out Wonder Project J2. Mortal Kombat Trilogy was first released in North America on November 12, 1996. Next released in PAL territories on December 9, 1997. This version has 7 less characters than its PlayStation and Saturn counterparts. The soundtrack is, well, not very good compared to the other two. The N64 port has an exclusive stage and a 3 vs 3 mode. Just a heads up, I'm not really a Mortal Kombat kind of guy. I mean, yes, when I was a kid I was just as excited for Mortal Monday as everybody else. I had 1 through 3 for the Genesis. I've just always been a Street Fighter fan. Street Fighter always seemed more polished than your other Mortal Kombat games. So one thing I learned about this game is they cut a lot of character animations. Since they did this, the game is much faster than the other two. Oh, and it only has Mortal Kombat 3 arenas. This game being called Trilogy isn't really true. It's not Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3. What it is instead is a rename on Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. That title brought back characters excluded from 3, and added characters like Rain and Error Macro, also known as Ermac. So as I mentioned earlier, this game moves fast. It feels very different from PS1 Mortal Kombat Trilogy. I'm only using this one for comparison since I've never played the Saturn port. It is cool being able to use characters like Scorpion, Kano, Raiden, and Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat 3. It's strange to me they cut so many fan favorite characters from Mortal Kombat 3 in the first place. Street Fighter 2 did this too, and had Double Impact and Third Strike, which brought back a lot of characters as well. It plays well enough, it's just alright though, so I don't think I'll be coming back to play it again. This game was a huge seller, mostly because of the lack of N64 games at the time. Unless you just really love Mortal Kombat or have a lot of nostalgia for the Nintendo 64 version, I feel like this is a game to skip if you want to play some 64 games.
Tonight's matchup, Philadelphia versus Dallas. Here's the opening face-off.
Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey was first released in North America on November 11, 1996, same day as Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Next released in PAL territories on March 1, 1997, and released in Japan on February 28, 1998. So once again, I'm not a fan of something. This time it's hockey. I am, however, a fan of arcade sports games, especially Arc Rivals, NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, and of course the Mutant League games. Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey is the first sports game released for the N64. Don't worry, I've still got some released in Japan in '96. My son and I played this one. We had a lot of fun with it. Since I've never been a hockey person, the only player I know is Wayne Gretzky. Getting around the ice is easy. Making shots wasn't always the best, but with more time with it, I'm sure we'd get better. The game has a championship mode, a versus mode, and practice. Really though, today it's much more of a party game, which I know isn't exactly the easiest thing to do today, but if you have someone to play it with, Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey is a fun time.
3, 2, 1. Get ready for the third period. The Stars, 3. The Flyers.
Killer Instinct Gold was first released on November 25, 1996. Next released in Australia on May 9, 1997, then in PAL territories on July 4, 1997. Killer Instinct was a big hit on the SNES, so they made a sequel, Killer Instinct 2, released in arcades, with an N64 port, Killer Instinct Gold. This one was supposed to show off the power of the N64, but cartridge limitations led to some cuts. Interestingly, Rare was also working on Killer Instinct 2 for the Super Nintendo. Development was complete, but Nintendo chose not to release it. Tim Stamper has the ROM for the game. I just highly doubt we'll ever see it. So I'll just say it, I'm not the best at fighting games. I had this game, but only knew a few combos that I don't really remember. Killer Instinct Gold has a few exclusive modes to it. Team battles with different variants, training, focus training, and tournament, with unlockables like character colors and game speed settings. Killer Instinct is a very combo-based series. If you've played it, you know all about the announcer. Once I went into training to give this game a fair shot, I really still like it. Saber Wolf specials are how I wish Guiles are. No charge, just back forward attack. It's been a long time since I played a game from Rare. When the Stamper brothers were there, they put out hit after hit. Killer Instinct has some interesting fighters. Definitely something needed to stand out between Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. They're really well designed and look great on the N64. The game does have finishing moves, but the ones I encountered were a bit, well... Killer Instinct Gold is still one hell of a fighter. Best thing about it is it's still playable on Rare Replay, along with the more graphically impressive Killer Instinct 2. Ikurano St was released in Japan on November 29, 1996. This is a golf game based on the St. Andrews course. This game emulates terribly. It wasn't worth capturing, so I'm just going to move on. Cruis'n USA was first released in North America on December 3, 1996. Next released in PAL territories on March 1, 1997. Oh man, this game is much worse than I remember it being. This is a port of the arcade game. Driving is kinda twitchy, it's just not fun. This was a game I got for Christmas in '96. I liked it enough then. I got this along with Shadows of the Empire and Killer Instinct Gold. The game has multiple tracks that take you across the USA. It's 2 players. If you have fond memories of this game, just leave them there. It really just reminds me of how crappy some of these games were back then. Jikkyou J-League Perfect Striker released in Japan on November 29, 1996. I'm not a soccer fan, but man is this game fun. My son and I had an intense game against each other. This game is very easy to pick up and play. The game has very good graphics for the time. It has multiple teams and stadiums. There are also a lot of animations. My son accidentally scored in his own goal. His player dropped down because of the mistake. I didn't think that animation would be in there.
This isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What am I fighting for?
The main thing is how easy it is to play. But still, it's soccer, so don't think the goalie isn't going to be guarding like a pro. If you've got someone to play this with, it's really a fun time. Check it out. Star Wars Shadows of the Empire was first released in North America on December 3, 1996. Next released in PAL territories on March 1, 1997, then released in Japan on June 14, 1997. Star Wars Shadows of the Empire was more than just a game. This was basically a movie launch without a movie. We got a novel that I read twice, we also got comic books, action figures, and even a soundtrack. I never thought about listening to the soundtrack while I read the book. If you've seen my Knights of the Old Republic or Jedi Academy reviews, you'll know that I was a huge Star Wars fan. Hell, someone asked me if I'd consider doing Star Wars lore videos. My love of Star Wars is mostly gone. Disney really did their best to kick us old fans out. I stuck with it all the way up until Ray Stevenson's last scene in Ahsoka. This video isn't about that, I just felt like it needed to be said. Shadows of the Empire is set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. The game stars Dash Rendar, an old acquaintance of Han Solo. He smuggles throughout the galaxy alongside his droid co-pilot Leebo. Prince Shizor is the main antagonist in this story. He leads the criminal organization Black Sun. He's a rival of Vader's, one of many who tried to take his place next to the Emperor. Dash Rendar does show up in A New Hope, while his ship the Outrider does. It got added when George Lucas did the special editions. The story begins with Dash getting supplies to Echo Base. He meets with Han, then the Empire attacks. This first stage still is just a great recreation of the Battle of Hoth. Speeding around blasting probe droids, AT-STs, and AT-ATs is still just a lot of fun. With the AT-ATs, you can trip them like Luke did. When I'm about to go down, I always take an AT-ST with me. Hoth is just as good as I remember it. The third-person sections are probably worse. Controlling Dash is clunky. He moves more like a tank than anything, and there's no crosshair when you're trying to manually aim. There are a few other types of stages too. One is in the gunner scene on the Outrider, where you have to shoot down a ridiculous amount of TIE fighters and TIE bombers. On Tatooine, Dash gets on a speeder bike. This was the worst of them all. I always hated how the speeder controlled. This is the point in the book where Luke builds his lightsaber though. At the end of the game, Dash takes part in the final assault. In this one, the Outrider's flyable, but by either collecting all the challenge tokens or using a cheat, the X-Wing and TIE Fighter are playable in this level. While Dark Forces came out 1 year prior, that was viewing Star Wars through a Doom lens. It was made with the Doom engine. Shadows of the Empire is a full 3D Star Wars experience. Obviously the graphics haven't aged well. When I first played this, I thought it was so cool exploring Echo Base, also seeing the Falcon take off. I can see myself playing Hoth again. It's a really tough one to recommend. Well, if anything looks interesting to you, give it a shot. Rogue Squadron might be a better Star Wars game for you though. Mario Kart 64 was first released in Japan on December 14, 1996. Next released in North America on February 10, 1997, and in PAL territories on June 24, 1997. There was a lot of hype around this one. Mario Kart is a classic on the Super Nintendo. I remember staring at images of Mario Kart 64 in gaming mags as a kid. Mario Kart 64 came out and did not disappoint. Koopa Troopa got dropped from this one and replaced with Wario. This game plays so well still, and just as fun as it always was. Drifting around corners for a speed boost is awesome. I remember watching my son and his friends play this when they were kids. This was during the PS3, Xbox 360, Wii era. It was really cool seeing kids having fun with this one so many years later. Mario Kart 64 has some classic tracks in it like Mario Raceway, Toad's Turnpike, Royal Raceway, and Bowser's Castle. These all show up in future games. Each Mario Kart is unique. They all play differently. For this reason, they're always worth coming back to. If it's been a while, give it a shot. Nintendo keeps this one available. Chokukan Night Pro Yakyu King was released in Japan on December 20th, 1996. This is a game I remember seeing in different gaming magazines at the time. This is a baseball game series featuring chibi versions of real players. Baseball is a big sport in Japan. It's a baseball game, so either you're going to be into this or you're not. This game has a little more charm than the other sports games I've talked about so far. It's not very hard to get the hang of the king of baseball. If you like baseball games, check this one out. Mahjong Master was released in Japan on December 20th, 1996. This one actually might be worth your time if you like Mahjong and can read kanji. This game has a story mode. It has a cast of characters. I was a bit surprised, but it seems like a lot more work went into Mahjong Master than the Shogi game from earlier. I don't know how to play Mahjong, so I don't really have anything else to say about this one. That was all 15 games released for the Nintendo 64 in 1996. Do you have any memories of these games? If you do, leave them down in the comments below. Now I know some of those were kind of short near the end there, but I really had nothing else to say about them. Also just keep in mind, when I do disappear, I promise I am working on something. Please do consider liking and subscribing. Peace.